The most dangerous moment in a man's life is not when he is broke. It's not when he's rejected, humiliated, or even betrayed. The most dangerous moment is when he achieves everything he once dreamed of, and it still doesn't feel like enough. When he stands at the summit, looks around and realizes the mountain was hollow, that the applause is fading, that the thrill is gone, and that perhaps he never climbed the right mountain to begin with. This is when men lose their edge, their purpose, their spark, not because they failed, but because they succeeded, and it didn't save them. There was a man, let's call him Marcus, grew up poor, obscure, invisible, bullied in school, underestimated at work. He burned with ambition. Every insult became fuel, every rejection a reason to sharpen his sword. He devoured books. He woke up at 5 a.m. to train, to hustle, to learn. 10 years later, he was a millionaire, built his own company, got the body, the respect, the status. People now asked for his advice. Women who once ignored him now watched him with awe. But something inside him had died, quietly, like a candle snuffed out when no one's looking. He had achieved everything, yet he felt numb. Because here's the secret nobody tells you. External victories never fill an internal void. They distract you, delay the reckoning, but eventually the silence catches up. The nights get longer. The victories feel hollow. The man who was once driven by fire becomes haunted by shadows. Marcus thought success would heal the wound, but it only dressed it in designer clothes. And the boy inside him? Still scared, still angry, still hoping someone would say, "You matter, even if you lose." And that's the problem. Most men are not chasing dreams. They're running from pain, running from the father who left, the love that broke them, the shame that shaped them. So they build empires to bury the boy. But the boy doesn't die. He waits, in the quiet, in the mirror, in the moments between meetings, until one day the man cracks, and the boy screams, and the whole world calls it a midlife crisis. But it's not a crisis. It's a return, a confrontation, a second chance to build a life not from wounds, but from truth. The man who survives this reckoning becomes dangerous in the best way, not because he's rich or ripped, but because he's rooted. He no longer needs applause. He walks into a room not to impress, but to observe. He doesn't chase love, he embodies it. He doesn't dominate, he anchors. He doesn't react, he responds. And that's terrifying to a world built on insecurity, because he cannot be manipulated, not by flattery, not by fear. He has seen the bottom, touched the void, and chose to return, not as a wounded animal, but as a conscious creator. But the journey is brutal, because it requires the death of the persona, the mask, the performer. It asks you to kill the part of you that survived by pretending, the part that smiled when it was dying, that said "I'm fine" when it was drowning, that chased goals not for joy but for validation. And that death hurts more than failure, because it's not public, it's private, silent, invisible. It's the kind of death that nobody applauds, but it's the only way rebirth is possible. And this rebirth, this reawakening is not loud. It doesn't come with fireworks. It arrives quietly, in moments, in pauses, in the morning light when you no longer feel anxious, in the conversation where you say what you mean, not what they want to hear, in the decision to walk away, not out of anger, but out of alignment. That's the moment you begin living from truth, not trauma, from presence, not performance. And that's when life starts feeling real again. But most men never make it past that threshold. They reach the gates of transformation and turn back. Why? Because the voice inside whispers, "If I stop performing, will they still love me?" It's terrifying to lay down your armor when it's the only thing that's ever kept you safe. When success was your survival strategy, surrender feels like death. And yet, if you don't let the false self die, the true self can never breathe. You'll keep building towers that impress everyone, except your soul. Marcus didn't break all at once. It happened slowly. A creeping dread on Sunday nights, a growing indifference to the wins, a quiet resentment toward the grind he once glorified. He kept pushing, more clients, more content, more everything, but the inner emptiness expanded. He started noticing he didn't laugh the same, didn't sleep the same. His eyes were always tired. His smile was more for the camera than for life. And then one day, he looked at his reflection and didn't recognize the man staring back, not because he had failed, but because he had vanished. So he did something radical. He stopped, not for a vacation, not for a burnout sabbatical. He stopped to listen, to feel, He turned down deals, turned off notifications, went on long walks without his phone, sat with the discomfort, and slowly the numbness began to thaw. Memories returned, old dreams resurfaced, not the ones shaped by scarcity or revenge, but the pure ones, from before the world taught him to perform. He remembered the boy who wanted to create, not compete, who wanted to love, not conquer, who wanted peace, not applause. That's when he realized he had confused drive with purpose. He was driven, yes, but driven by pain. Purpose is different. It's not about proving anything. It's about aligning with who you really are. Drive pushes, purpose pulls. Drive exhausts, purpose energizes. Drive seeks to win. Purpose seeks to serve. The world praises drive, but it's purpose that transforms. Marcus didn't need to abandon ambition. He just had to anchor it in truth. This shift changed everything. He started saying no more. Not out of fear, but from clarity. He stopped trying to be the best and started trying to be real. He made fewer promises, but kept them all. He showed up with fewer words, but deeper presence. People noticed. Some were confused, some walked away. But the right ones leaned in. Because truth is magnetic. It doesn't entertain, it awakens. And when a man leads with truth, he stops attracting chaos. He begins to build peace, not just around him, but within him. Marcus rebuilt his business, but slower, wiser. He made time for joy, for creativity, for silence. He still worked hard, but not from fear of falling behind. He knew now that what he creates from wholeness has more power than what he builds from wounds. He no longer needed everyone to understand him. He just needed to understand himself. And in that understanding, he found peace deeper than applause, love truer than attention, and success richer than money. That's the path of the awakened man. Not the man who never breaks, but the one who lets the breaking reveal his truth. Not the man who conquers his demons, but the one who learns to sit with them, listen, and lead from integration. He doesn't pretend to be perfect. He dares to be whole, and in a world full of masks, that wholeness is revolutionary. You see, true masculinity isn't performance. It's presence. It's not domination. It's direction. It's not control. It's consciousness. The strong man isn't the loudest in the room. He's the one who doesn't need the room at all. Because he's already rooted in something deeper than opinion. He's rooted in being. This kind of man is rare. Not because it's impossible, but because it requires everything. The courage to face yourself. The humility to heal. The patience to grow. And the integrity to keep showing up when nobody is watching. Most men are taught how to win, but not how to live. How to compete, but not how to connect. How to chase, but not how to become. But the world is starving for men who have become. Men who no longer run from their past, but walk with it. Men who don't seek validation, but offer vision. Men who are no longer consumed by status, but compelled by soul. These men don't just change rooms, they change realities. And yet becoming whole is not a single moment of awakening. It's a series of initiations. Each one strips away another layer of the false self. Each one demands a deeper honesty. Marcus learned this not through books or gurus, but through the quiet trials of everyday life. The discomfort of sitting still. The vulnerability of telling the truth when it's easier to perform. The humility of realizing that healing doesn't make you more impressive, it just makes you more real. And real is what the world needs, even if it doesn't always know it. He began to recognize his shadow, not as something to hide, but as something to integrate. The part of him that craved power, that feared irrelevance, that still wanted to be admired. He stopped shaming it. He listened. And in that listening, he understood. These were not enemies. They were exiled parts of himself, wounded archetypes still stuck in survival mode. The tyrant who once protected him from humiliation, the addict who soothed his loneliness, the orphan who longed to be chosen. When he welcomed them back, not as rulers but as messengers, he found strength deeper than force. He found peace. This is the turning point for many men. When success is no longer the goal, but integration is. When the question shifts from how do I win to who am I becoming, it's not flashy, it won't trend, but it's sacred. Because this inner work doesn't just change the man, it changes his impact. His leadership no longer stems from control, but from alignment. He stops chasing women to feel worthy and starts relating to them from fullness. He stops competing with other men and starts creating space for their healing too. He no longer tries to be alpha, he becomes human. There's a profound difference between the boy who wants to impress and the man who wants to serve. The boy chases affirmation, the man channels presence. The boy seeks recognition, the man seeks resonance. The boy fears being overlooked. The man knows that his value is not diminished by silence, because he no longer lives in reaction, he lives in response. From center, from clarity, from self. Carl Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." That privilege comes with pain, with paradox, with patience, but also with power, not the kind that dominates others, but the kind that liberates you from within. Marcus began to live from this place, not perfectly, but intentionally. When triggers came, he paused. When old patterns returned, he didn't shame them, he studied them. When temptation whispered, "Prove yourself," he smiled, because he knew there is nothing left to prove when you've made peace with who you are. He no longer rushed transformation, he trusted it. Some days felt divine, others devastating. But even in the confusion, he stayed grounded, because now his roots weren't in image, they were in identity. Not the constructed identity of ego, but the revealed identity of essence. The man behind the mask, the soul behind the strategy. And from that place, his work shifted, his relationships deepened, his creativity exploded. Not because he tried harder, but because he was finally aligned. He discovered that real power is subtle. It doesn't need a stage, it doesn't scream, it doesn't flex, it simply is. And its presence changes everything. In meetings, people felt calmer. In conflict, he brought clarity. In love, he brought safety. He was no longer the loudest, but he was the most grounded. And in a world drowning in noise, groundedness is medicine. This is the archetype of the mature masculine. The integrated king, not the tyrant, not the puppet. The one who governs his life with wisdom, not impulse. Who protects without controlling, who leads without seeking followers, who blesses instead of boasts. He's not immune to fear. He just refuses to let fear decide for him. He carries both sword and song. He's fierce but never cruel, soft but never weak. He walks with boundaries but also with open hands, because he knows love is not possession, it is presence. And this is what we must become. Not men who perform, but men who embody. Not men who suppress, but men who integrate. Not men who dominate, but men who deepen. The world doesn't need more warriors addicted to war. It needs warriors of peace. Guardians of the inner world, fathers of vision, brothers of truth, lovers of the sacred. And for that, we must return to wholeness. Marcus's journey into mature masculinity wasn't just about healing himself. It became a call to embody a new kind of leadership. One rooted not in domination or control, but in responsibility and presence. He realized that the archetype of the inner king was not about external power, but about internal sovereignty. This king rules not with an iron fist, but with a steady heart. He protects his realm, not by fear, but by cultivating safety and trust. The inner king does not demand loyalty. He inspires it by living with integrity. This shift transformed Marcus's relationships. He became a father, not only biologically, but spiritually. He learned to hold space for his children's growth without trying to shape them in his image. He became a mentor, a guardian of potential rather than a judge of mistakes. The energy he carried wasn't aggressive or anxious. It was calm, confident, and clear. His presence invited others to stand in their own power rather than lean on his. Marcus discovered that this archetype calls for boundaries, not walls. Boundaries that protect without imprisoning, that say no with compassion and yes with clarity. The inner king knows when to hold firm and when to yield. He understands that true strength lies in discernment, not brute force. This wisdom became Marcus's compass in both personal and professional life. He no longer reacted impulsively to challenges, but responded with thoughtful intention. In the modern world, this kind of leadership is rare, but desperately needed. Many men have been conditioned to equate masculinity with toughness, suppression of emotion, or control over others. Marcus learned to dismantle these myths. He embraced vulnerability as a source of strength and connection. He saw that showing emotion did not diminish him, but deepened his influence. People around him began to trust him more because he was authentic, flaws and all. This transformation also expanded Marcus's vision of love. He moved away from possessiveness and codependency toward a love that is free and expansive. Love became less about fixing or controlling another and more about honoring their journey and growth. He learned to love without attachment to outcomes, trusting that healthy relationships thrive when each person is free to be their whole self. Marcus's path showed him that masculine power is an energy to be mastered, not suppressed. It can be fierce and tender, disciplined and spontaneous, rooted and fluid. It demands continual growth, a willingness to face discomfort, own mistakes, and evolve. The inner king is a lifelong project, a sacred practice of self-mastery and service. This archetype also embraces the shadow, the aspects of masculinity that are often denied or feared. The rage, the jealousy, the fear of inadequacy. Marcus didn't run from these feelings. He met them with courage and curiosity. By integrating these parts, he reclaimed his full humanity. He stopped projecting his fears onto others and started owning them as parts of his story. This integration brought balance, preventing the destructive patterns of domination or passivity. Through this process, Marcus became a pillar of stability in his community. People came to him not because he was the loudest voice, but because he was steady, reliable, and wise. His leadership was subtle but profound, influencing others to find their own strength and purpose. He inspired a new generation of men to step into their own inner kings, not by imitation, but through authenticity. The archetype of the inner king is not about perfection, but presence. It invites men to show up fully, even when uncertain or afraid. It calls for patience, humility, and courage. Marcus's journey reminds us that this is the future of masculinity, not a return to outdated dominance, but a rise into conscious sovereignty. It's a transformation from reactive ego to responsive self, from isolated strength to interconnected power. In embracing this archetype, men heal themselves and their communities. They become healers, leaders, and lovers who contribute to a more balanced and compassionate world. The inner king teaches that true power serves life. It does not consume it. Marcus's story is a testament to the possibility of this evolution, a beacon for those ready to walk the path. Marcus's evolution led him deeper into understanding leadership as service rather than control. He realized that true influence comes not from commanding obedience, but from inspiring growth in others. This kind of leadership is rooted in humility and a commitment to something greater than personal gain. Marcus saw that when a leader serves their community with authenticity and care, the community flourishes naturally. His approach shifted from exerting power over others to empowering them, unlocking potential instead of enforcing compliance. He began to apply this principle not just in his family, but also at work and in his friendships. Marcus started listening more deeply, valuing perspectives different from his own. He recognized that collaboration and shared vision create stronger, more resilient systems. By letting go of the need to control outcomes, he found himself less stressed and more open to creative solutions. This openness fostered trust and respect, which became the foundation for lasting connections. Marcus also confronted his fear of vulnerability. For years, he equated vulnerability with weakness, a dangerous misconception that many men carry. But through his journey, he discovered that vulnerability is actually a gateway to deeper strength. When he allowed himself to be seen, fully and imperfectly, he invited others to do the same. This authenticity broke down barriers and created space for genuine intimacy in his relationships. He learned that courage is not the absence of fear, but the willingness to act in spite of it. In his romantic relationship, Marcus transformed his understanding of love. Instead of trying to fix or control his partner, he focused on presence and acceptance. He practiced loving without expectation, embracing both joy and challenge as parts of the shared journey. This shift dissolved many old patterns of jealousy and possessiveness, replacing them with respect and freedom. Marcus realized that love grounded in autonomy and mutual growth is far more fulfilling and sustainable. His experience also reshaped his view of masculinity itself. Marcus saw that masculinity is not a rigid set of behaviors, but a dynamic energy that can express softness and strength simultaneously. He embraced the paradox of being both protector and nurturer, warrior and healer. This balance allowed him to navigate life's complexities with greater ease and grace. It freed him from the cultural scripts that had limited his potential and relationships. Marcus's story highlights the importance of integrating all parts of the self, including those deemed unmanly or unacceptable by society. By owning his emotions, desires, and shadows, he became whole. This wholeness enabled him to relate to others from a place of authenticity rather than defense. It also deepened his spiritual connection, as he experienced himself as part of a larger, interconnected whole. This awareness fueled his compassion and commitment to serving others. As Marcus embraced this new model of masculinity and leadership, he became a catalyst for change in his community. Men who once struggled with anger, isolation, or confusion began to seek his example and guidance. He helped create safe spaces for men to explore their vulnerabilities and strengths without judgment. Through these efforts, Marcus contributed to a broader cultural shift toward healthier expressions of masculinity, one grounded in respect, responsibility, and emotional intelligence. This transformation is not easy or quick. It requires ongoing self-reflection, courage to face discomfort, and the willingness to rewrite lifelong narratives. Marcus's journey shows that the path to mature masculinity and conscious leadership is a lifelong practice. It calls for patience with oneself and others, resilience in the face of setbacks, and a deep commitment to growth. Ultimately, Marcus's evolution points toward a future where men can be fully themselves, flawed, vulnerable, powerful, and compassionate. This future holds the promise of relationships built on trust and freedom, communities grounded in mutual support, and a world enriched by diverse expressions of strength. By stepping into the role of the inner king as a servant leader, Marcus embodies a vision of masculinity that heals, uplifts, and transforms. In the final phase of Marcus's transformation, he embraced the concept of legacy, not as a quest for fame or wealth, but as a deep responsibility to nurture future generations. He understood that true legacy lies in the values, wisdom, and emotional health passed down through example and intentional action. Marcus committed himself to cultivating not only his own growth, but also to supporting others on their journeys. This meant mentoring younger men, fostering open dialogues about masculinity, and creating environments where healing and growth are encouraged. He also began to see the power of rituals and symbolic acts in anchoring his transformation. Rituals helped him mark transitions, release old patterns, and set intentions for the future. Whether through quiet moments of reflection, ceremonies with loved ones, or physical challenges, Marcus found that these practices connected him to something larger than himself. They reinforced his sense of purpose and belonging, grounding his evolving identity in a sacred context. Marcus's story is a testament to the ongoing nature of personal growth. There is no final destination, only continuous unfolding. Each stage of his journey revealed new depths to explore and new shadows to integrate. But with each step, he moved closer to living as his most authentic self, aligned with his values, connected to others, and contributing meaningfully to the world around him. For those watching, Marcus's journey offers an invitation to question inherited beliefs about strength and leadership, to embrace vulnerability as a source of power, and to redefine what it means to be a man in today's world. It challenges us to move beyond outdated scripts and cultivate a masculinity that honors complexity, compassion, and courage. The road ahead may be challenging, but it is also rich with possibility. As more men choose to lead from service rather than dominance, the ripple effects will transform families, communities, and societies. We are witnessing the emergence of a new paradigm, one where masculine energy is integrated, balanced, and life-affirming. Marcus's evolution is a beacon of hope and a call to action. It reminds us that change begins within, that healing is possible, and that by stepping into our fullest selves, we can contribute to a more just, loving, and connected world. The inner king within each man awaits, ready to rise, serve, and inspire.